Polar Bear, What Do You Hear? By Bill Martin Jr. and Eric Carle. Polar Bear, what do you hear? I hear a lion roaring in my ear. Lion, what do you hear? I hear a hippopotamus snorting in my ear. Hippopotamus, what do you hear? I hear a flamingo fletting in my ear. Flamingo, what do you hear? I hear a zebra braying in my ear. Zebra, what do you hear? I hear a boa constrictor hissing in my ear. Boa constrictor, what do you hear? I hear an elephant trumpeting in my ear. Elephant, what do you hear? I hear a leopard snarling in my ear. Leopard, what do you hear? I hear a peacock yelping in my ear. Uh-oh. Peacock, what do you hear? I hear a walrus bellowing in my ear. Walrus, what do you hear? I hear a zookeeper whistling in my ear. Zookeeper, what do you hear? I hear children growling like a polar bear, roaring like a lion, snorting like a hippopotamus, fluting like a flamingo, braying like a zebra, hissing like a boa constrictor, trumpeting like an elephant, snarling like a leopard, yelping like a peacock, bellowing like a walrus. That's what I hear. Penguin Problems by Jory John, illustrated by Lane Smith. It's way too early. My beak is cold. What's with all the squawking, you guys? Snowed some more last night. I don't even like the snow. It's too bright out here. I'm hungry. I'd like a fish. Where are all the fish? Hey, fish, get out here. The ocean smells too salty today. I'm not buoyant enough. I sink like a dumb rock. It's way too dark down here. Brr. I said brr. Oh, great, an orca. Oh, great, a leopard seal. Oh, great, a shark. What is with this place? I don't like being hunted. I'm still hungry, but my flippers ache. I waddle too much. I look silly when I waddle. See? I wish I could fly, but I can't. See? Everybody looks the same as me. I look the same as everybody else. Mom, I literally have no idea who you are. Dad, I literally have no idea what you're talking about. My name is Mortimer. I have so many problems and nobody even cares. Excuse me, sir. What? Good afternoon. I sense that today has been difficult, but lo, look around you, penguin. Have you noticed the way that the mountains are reflected in the ocean like a painting? Have you gazed upon the blue of the cloudless winter sky, my friend? Have you felt the sun as it gently warms your back? Have you simply stood with your penguin brothers and sisters and elders who adore you? Yes, some things are challenging out here. Yes, we have difficult moments. From the walruses to the polar bears, from the whales to the penguins. But hear me now, my new friend. I wouldn't trade my life for any other, and I'm quite sure you wouldn't either. I'm certain that when you think about it, you'll realize that you're exactly where you need to be. Please think about what I've said, penguin. Goodbye for now. Who the heck was that guy? Why do strangers always talk to me? Walruses don't understand penguin problems. Okay. Maybe that walrus has a point. After all, I do love the mountains. And the ocean. And the sky. And I'm my friends and family. This is my only home. And this is my only life. Maybe things will work out after all. My beak is cold. It gets dark way too early. Extra Yarn by Mac Barnett, illustrated by John Klassen. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town, everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys. Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars too, but there was still extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog, and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet," shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone. Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out she could, and she did, even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton, and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Louis. She made sweaters for everyone except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats, and for other animals too. And soon people thought, soon, Annabelle will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. Things began to change in that little town. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and shake Annabelle's hand. One day, an archduke who was very fond of clothes sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1,000,000. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. $2,000,000, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10,000,000, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. So that night, the archduke hired 3 robbers to break in Annabelle's house, and they stole the box and took it to the archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea, back to his castle. The archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair, and then he took out the box and he lifted its lid and he looked inside. His mustache quivered, it shivered, it trembled. The archduke hurled the box out of the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But it turned out she was. The end. The Mitten, adapted and illustrated by Jan Brett. Once there was a boy named Nicky who wanted his new mittens made from wool as white as snow. At first, his grandmother, Baba, did not want to knit white mittens. "If you drop one in the snow," she warned, "you'll never find it." But Nicky wanted snow white mittens, and finally Baba made them. After she finished, she said, "When you come home, first I will look to see if you are safe and sound, but then I will look to see if you still have your snow white mittens." So off Nicky went, and it wasn't long until one of his new mittens dropped in the snow and was left behind. A mole, tired from tunneling along, discovered the mitten and burrowed inside. It was cozy and warm and just the right size, so he decided to stay. A snowshoe rabbit came hopping by. He stopped for a moment to admire his winter coat. It was then that he saw the mitten, and he wiggled in, feet first. The mole didn't think there was room for both of them, but when he saw the rabbit's big kickers, he moved over. Next, a hedgehog came snuffling along. Having spent the day looking under wet leaves for things to eat, he decided to move into the mitten and warm himself. The mole and the rabbit were bumped and jostled, but not being ones to argue with someone covered with prickles, they made room. As soon as the hedgehog disappeared into the mitten, a big owl, attracted by the commotion, swooped down. When he decided to move in also, the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog grumbled. But when they saw the owl's glinty talons, they quickly let him in. Up through the snow appeared a badger. He eyed the mitten and began to climb in. The mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, and the owl were not pleased. There was no room left. When they saw his diggers, they gave him the thumb. It started snowing, but the animals were snug in the mitten. A waft of warm steam rose in the air. A fox trying by stopped to investigate. Just the sight of the cozy mitten made him feel drowsy. The fox poked his muzzle in. When the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, and the badger saw his shiny teeth, they gave the fox lots of room. A great bear lumbered by. He spied the mitten all plumped up. Not being one to be left out in the cold, he began to nose his way in. The animals were packed in as tightly as could be. But what animal would argue with a bear? The mitten swelled and stretched. It was pulled and bulged to many times its size, but Baba's good knitting held fast. Along came a meadow mouse, no bigger than an acorn. She wriggled into the one space left and made herself comfortable on top of the great bear's nose. The bear, tickled by the mouse's whiskers, gave an enormous sneeze. Ah, ah, achoo! The force of the sneeze shot the mitten up into the sky and scattered the animals in all directions. On his way home, Nicky saw a white shape in the distance. It was his lost mitten silhouetted against the blue sky. As he ran to catch his snow-white mitten, he saw Baba's face in the window. First, she looked to see if he was safe and sound, and then she saw that he still had his new mittens. Red Sled by Lita Judge. Scrunch, 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 scrunch. Scrunch, 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 scrunch. Alley-oop. Gadong, 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 gadong. Whoa. 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 Eee. Flump. Scrunch, 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 scrunch. Whee!